The wind howled through the empty streets as the cold night settled over the city. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint cry echoed, a small, desperate wail barely loud enough to rise above the rustling leaves and the distant hum of traffic. A 3-year-old boy, barely able to stand properly, sat trembling near a pile of discarded boxes in a deserted alleyway. His tiny fingers clutched at the rough concrete beneath him as he sobbed. His clothes were tattered, his face streaked with tears and dirt. But the most heartbreaking of all were his eyes, blank and unseeing, clouded by the darkness he had known all his life. He didn't know how he got there, nor did he understand why he was alone. All he knew was that he was scared, hungry, and cold. His small voice cracked as he cried out again, hoping anyone would hear him. But no one came, until a soft, warm presence approached him. The boy flinched as something wet touched his cheek, but it wasn't rough or painful. It was a gentle, reassuring lick. A warm breath followed, and then a body curled around him. Sniffling, the child hesitantly reached out, his fingers brushing against thick, matted fur. A dog. The stray, a large mixed breed with patches of missing fur and scars from past battles, had wandered the streets for years. He had seen cruelty and neglect, and had learned that humans weren't always kind. But this tiny human, this helpless creature, was different. He smelled of innocence and loneliness. The dog whined softly, nuzzling the child, offering the only comfort he could. The boy, still sobbing, wrapped his arms around the warm body beside him. For the first time that night, his cries softened. He was no longer alone. Hours passed as the boy drifted in and out of sleep, his tiny body curled against the dog's warmth. The stray stayed awake, his ears twitching at every sound, his body tense and ready to protect the child from anything that approached. Then, as the first light of dawn touched the sky, the dog's ears perked up. Footsteps, voices. A woman carrying a bag of groceries stopped at the alley's entrance, her eyes widening in shock at the sight before her. A blind child, alone, shivering, wrapped around a stray dog. She dropped her bags and ran forward. The boy whimpered at the sudden noise, but the dog didn't growl or lunge. Instead, he lifted his head and let out a soft, almost pleading bark. The woman knelt beside them, her hands shaking as she gently touched the boy's shoulder. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Where is your family?" she asked. The child didn't respond. He only clung tighter to the dog, his small hands gripping the fur as if afraid he would be taken from his only protector. The woman looked around, hoping to see a frantic parent running toward them, but the streets were empty. No one was searching for him. Her heart clenched as she carefully lifted the boy into her arms. He whimpered but didn't resist. The dog immediately stood up, his tail low, his body tense. The woman hesitated, meeting the loyalty in the dog's eyes. He had not simply stumbled upon the child. He had stayed, protected him, and kept him warm. She made a decision. "Come on, boy," she whispered, motioning for the stray to follow. The dog didn't hesitate. He walked beside her, step for step, never taking his eyes off the child in her arms. At the hospital, doctors and social workers scrambled to make sense of the situation. The child was severely dehydrated and malnourished. He had no identification, and no missing persons report matched his description. He was truly alone. And yet, he wasn't. Through every examination and every test, the stray never left his side. He growled when doctors tried to separate them, and only calmed when the child's tiny fingers found his fur again. Days passed, but no parents came forward. The woman who had found them visited every day, watching as the dog and child remained inseparable. Then one afternoon, as she sat beside the hospital bed, she spoke softly. "You two belong together, don't you?" The dog thumped his tail. The child, though he could not see, reached out instinctively toward his furry companion. That day, she made another decision. The adoption process took time. Social workers questioned her, making sure she understood what she was taking on. A blind child with no known history, a stray dog with an unknown past. But she never wavered. A few weeks later, a little boy and his dog walked out of the hospital together. The child, now dressed in warm clothes and no longer trembling from hunger, held on to the dog's fur as they stepped outside into the fresh air. The woman knelt beside them, smiling through her tears. "Welcome home." And for the first time in a long time, Neither the child nor the dog felt lost anymore.